Nobody expected the janitor to speak up. In a room full of certified mechanics, covered in grease and pride, the last person anyone thought would say anything about a broken V12 engine was the man sweeping the floor. But when the shop's head mechanic threw his wrench in frustration and declared the engine impossible to fix, the janitor quietly stepped forward and said 10 words that changed everything. "I think I can fix it, if you let me try." The room went silent, like someone had pressed pause on the whole world. Then came the laughter, loud, dismissive, cruel, the kind of laughter that sticks in your skin long after it ends. You are the janitor," one of the younger mechanics said, smirking as he leaned against the workbench. "You do not even touch the cars." "I know," the janitor replied calmly, "but I watch and I learn." His name was Keon, 42, years old, tall, quiet, and always polite. He had been working at Broadline Auto Service for nearly 5 years, never late a single day. Most people just walked past him. To them, he was part of the background, invisible, necessary, forgettable. But Keon had a past none of them knew about. A past he had buried so deep not even his closest co-worker Shayla knew a thing about it. That morning, everything changed. It all started when a rare Italian sports car was towed into the shop, a sleek red piece of machinery worth more than most of their homes. The owner, a man in a gray suit with a smug expression, had demanded it be fixed before the weekend. "This engine is unique," he warned. "Mess it up, and you will not just pay with money." Nobody wanted to touch it, but their manager, Ruben, insisted. "This is the kind of job that builds our name," he said, clapping his hands together. "So get to work." For 2 days they tried everything. The engine would not start. The onboard diagnostics gave no helpful codes. Every time they thought they had figured it out, it refused to cooperate. Ruben grew more stressed. The client grew more angry. The team grew more anxious. And then came the moment, Ruben yelling, "I give up! This thing is cursed!" That was when Keon had spoken. The laughter from the crew was not just about his job title. It was about the assumption that someone, like him, quiet, black, working as a janitor, had nothing to offer when it came to something as complex as a European engine. "Go back to mopping," someone muttered. But Keon did not back down. He looked straight at Ruben and said, "Give me one chance. If I fail, you never hear from me again." Ruben hesitated. The risk was low. The engine was already dead. Nobody else had any better ideas. So, with a sigh, he tossed Keon a pair of gloves and said, "You break it worse, it is on you." Keon nodded. He did not speak again. He just walked up to the car like he had known it forever. And that was when everything started to shift. People expected him to fumble, to touch something wrong, to trip over his own feet. But Keon did none of that. He popped the hood, examined the engine with a sharp gaze, and began checking things nobody had even thought of. For the first time, the team noticed something strange, the way Keon moved, the precision in his hands, the calm in his face. He was not guessing. He was solving. One of the younger mechanics, a tall guy named Jalen, whispered to another, "You think he has done this before?" "No way," the other replied. "He probably watched a YouTube video or something." But by the end of that hour, Keon had narrowed the problem down to a rare timing synchronization failure that most modern mechanics never even encounter. Then he did something even bolder. He asked Ruben for a part number. Ruben raised an eyebrow. "How do you know it is that?" "Because the intake cams are not matching the crankshaft rotation," Keon said. "Listen to the engine when I turn it manually." He turned the crank, and sure enough, the strange gap in sound and resistance told a story none of them had noticed. Ruben stared. Shayla stepped closer. "How do you know that?" she asked. Keon gave a small smile. "Long story?" The part was ordered. Nobody said it out loud, but the mood shifted. People gave Keon space now. Some looked nervous. Some looked impressed. And Ruben? He stayed quiet, watching closely. While they waited for the part to arrive, word spread. Even the front desk staff heard about the janitor who cracked the V12. A few even came into the shop pretending to clean just to catch a glimpse of Keon at work. That night, Shayla sat next to him on the lunch bench outside and asked the question on everyone's mind, "Why are you working here as a janitor?" Keon shrugged. "Bills to pay. Quiet life. That is all." "But you are not just some regular guy," she said. "You do not fix cars like someone who guesses. You fix them like someone who used to teach others." Keon looked up at the sky, and for a moment it seemed like he might say something real. But then he just smiled again. "I used to know a few things, still remember a little." Shayla did not press, but something in her expression said she would not stop wondering. When the part arrived the next morning, Keon installed it himself. Jalen offered to help, but Keon declined gently. "It is better if I do it all myself. One hand, one mind." The final test came. Ruben stood behind him. The client's assistant was on the phone, demanding updates. The team gathered around, holding their breath. Keon turned the key. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then, with a deep, powerful roar, the engine came alive, perfect, smooth, balanced. The garage erupted into shouts, cheers, and stunned silence. Ruben stared like he had seen a ghost. Jalen dropped the wrench in his hand. Shayla covered her mouth. Keon just stood there, wiping, his hands with a cloth. "I told you it could be fixed," he said quietly. That would have been enough to shock the whole crew. But what happened next was something nobody could have predicted, not even Keon, because the man in the gray suit, the one who owned the car, he showed up 20 minutes later. And when he saw Keon standing near the car, he did something that made everyone freeze. He rushed toward him, eyes wide, and shouted, "Keon, is that really you?" Keon stiffened. He turned slowly, and recognition flickered across his face. The man walked straight up to Ruben, completely ignoring the rest of the staff. "Do you even know who this man is?" he demanded. Ruben blinked. "He is our janitor?" The man laughed in disbelief. "Janitor?" This man was once the lead design engineer for Stratix engines. He helped build the prototype of the engine inside that car. The entire room fell silent again. This time, nobody laughed. Keon looked tired, not embarrassed, not proud, just tired. "I left that world a long time ago," he said softly. But it was too late. The truth was out. And what came next? Nobody at Broadline Auto was ready for it. Nobody moved. The entire garage stood frozen as the man in the gray suit stared at Keon like he had just seen a living legend. "You built this engine," he said again. "You helped design the Stratix V12. You were the brains behind the rotating combustion module. And you are working here as a janitor?" Ruben's lips parted, but no sound came out. The other mechanics looked from the man to Keon and back again, searching for some mistake. But Keon's silence confirmed everything. Shayla was the first to speak. "You used to be an engineer?" Keon finally nodded. "Yes, a long time ago." "But why did you never say anything?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Keon took a deep breath. "Because when people know who you were, they stop seeing who you are." The man in the suit turned to Ruben again. "You have someone like this cleaning floors while your team fails to diagnose a timing issue?" Ruben swallowed hard. "He never told us. I did not know." Keon stepped forward. "It is not Ruben's fault. I chose this job. I wanted a quiet life. I had my reasons." That seemed to calm the man slightly, but only for a moment. "Well, your quiet life just made headlines." He pulled out his phone and started typing furiously. "I did not tell you my name earlier," the man said, still typing. "I am Leonard Danes. I run performance partnerships for Stratix now." And the second I heard the engine was acting up, I knew I had to see who fixed it. "I never expected to find you." Keon's jaw tightened. "I appreciate the visit, Leonard, but I am not going back. You do not even want to hear what I have to say? I already know what you will offer." "I am not interested." Ruben raised a hand. "Wait, go back. Are you telling me this man used to work at Stratix?" The company that designed this entire car's powertrain? Yes, Leonard said. Keon was one of our top engineers, one of the few who could write and build from scratch, not just blueprints, the math, the tuning, the actual hardware. He was a genius. Shayla stepped forward, disbelief still on her face. But what happened? Keon looked at her, then at the rest of the team. I lost someone, he said quietly. And after that, the work did not matter anymore. The stress, the deadlines, the nights I never came home. I blamed that world for taking what I loved. So I walked away. Nobody said anything. Even the loudest mouths in the garage now stood completely still. I took jobs where nobody would ask questions, Keon continued. Jobs that let me disappear. This place, it was peaceful. I cleaned. I watched. I stayed out of the way. But you never stopped being that man, Shayla said. Keon gave a small smile. You never really unlearn what you build with your own hands. Leonard sighed. I get it, Keon, I really do. But you should know something. After you left, everything started falling apart. We have been trying to revive the Gen 3 model for 2 years. Nobody can make the combustion system stable. We need you. Keon turned away. You do not need me. You need someone to solve your failures. That is not fair. What is? Not fair is spending your life building something that costs you everything, Keon said, his voice sharper now. I gave that company my mind, and in the end, I had no family left to share it with. Everyone looked away, unsure what to say. Even Leonard seemed lost for words, but then Shayla did something nobody expected. She placed a hand gently on Keon's arm. You cannot hide from your gift forever, she said. It is still a part of you. Maybe it always will be. Keon looked at her, his eyes softer now. You think I should go back? I think you deserve to decide for yourself, without the weight of regret. He said nothing, but something in his face shifted. Leonard glanced down at his phone. Too late to stay hidden now anyway. Word is already spreading. Someone from the dealership posted a video of you fixing the car. People are asking questions. It is getting traction. Keon closed his eyes for a moment. Of course it is. Reuben stepped forward slowly, his voice more careful than usual. Keon, I will be honest. When you asked to try fixing that engine, I thought it was a joke. I laughed at you. We all did. He paused. But I was wrong. And I am sorry. Keon nodded. Thank you, Jalen finally spoke. What happens now? Are you leaving? Keon looked around the shop. The worn tools, the greasy floors, the broken vending machine in the corner. The place that had given him 5 years of quiet, of healing, of invisibility. Then he looked at Shayla, and something in his chest pulled. I do not know yet. That afternoon, the dealership's video went viral. Auto blogs picked it up. Forums exploded with theories about the mystery mechanic. Within hours, Keon's name was trending in engineering circles. Stratix released a quiet statement, confirming he had worked for them years ago, but gave no details. By the next morning, 3 reporters had called the shop. 2 engineering recruiters emailed the front desk asking to reach him directly. Leonard came back a second time with a full offer letter. 6 figures, relocation package, a leadership role in the new R&D division, and the opportunity to build the engine he once dreamed of. On his terms. Keon did not even open the envelope, not yet. Instead, he stayed late that night, cleaning up like he always did. Shayla found him alone in the break room, wiping down the coffee machine. You are really not going to read it? She asked, nodding toward the envelope on the table. I am not ready. She walked closer. You cannot run from the past forever. I am not running. I am choosing. But what if your future is trying to choose you back? He looked at her for a long time. You really believe that? I do. Silence filled the room. Then Keon asked, If I left, would you miss me? Shayla smiled softly. Yes. But I would be proud. He nodded. That night he took the envelope home, and for the first time in years, he opened it. But before he could make a decision, something else happened. A customer came in the next day, a woman in tears, clutching the keys to a broken-down minivan. She said her car would not start, and she could not afford a full diagnostic. She begged for help. Reuben told her they were fully booked. The other techs brushed her off. But Keon? Keon walked out quietly, asked for her keys, and told her to wait. Within minutes, he had the hood open. He checked the wiring, the ignition coil, the plugs, and then he smiled. It was a minor fix, a loose connection. He tightened it, replaced a worn clip, and told her to try starting it. The engine came to life, the woman cried, not out of shock, but relief. She said her son had a hospital appointment, and she had no other way to get there. Keon nodded, handed her the keys, and told her no charge. When she left, Reuben watched him from a distance. So did Shayla. It was that moment, that small act, that reminded everyone who Keon really was, not just a brilliant mind, but a good man, and the decision he would make next would not just change his life, it would change the entire auto industry. That same afternoon, Reuben sat in his office staring at the security camera footage of Keon helping the woman. There was no dramatic music, no crowd, no fanfare, just a man doing the right thing without needing to be seen. Reuben leaned back in his chair and let out a sigh. The realization had finally sunk in. For all the years he had spent judging Keon by the uniform he wore, he had failed to see the greatness sitting right in front of him. Outside the office, the garage buzzed with activity, but something had shifted. Every mechanic who had once looked down on Keon now watched him with a new kind of respect, not fear, not confusion, but genuine admiration. Even Jalen, who used to joke the most, now quietly asked Keon for help diagnosing a turbolag issue. Keon, of course, did not brag. He simply helped and moved on, but the attention from outside the shop was not slowing down. Leonard Danes returned. The next day, this time not alone. He brought two men in black suits who introduced themselves as executives from the Stratix Innovation Board. They had flown in specifically to meet Keon. Reuben, Shayla, and the others stood awkwardly near the front office as the three men entered the garage. Keon was under a car, tightening a catalytic bracket, when he heard the footsteps. He slid out slowly, wiped his hands, and stood up. "You brought company," he said calmly. Leonard nodded. "They want to offer you something bigger than a job." One of the men stepped forward. "Mr. Keon Dawes, we would like to name you as the lead technical advisor for Stratix's North American division. You will have full control over design decisions, complete freedom to form your own team, and a stake in the equity of the engine program you built years ago. We believe it is time you reclaimed your legacy." Keon did not answer right away. He looked around the shop. "May I have a moment to think?" he asked. "Of course," the man replied. "We will be waiting." After they left, Shayla came to his side. "Are you really going to do it?" Keon looked down. "It is tempting, but I cannot decide from a title or a paycheck." Shayla gave him a look. "Then decide from what makes you feel alive again." That night, Keon stayed late again. But this time, he was not cleaning floors. He opened up his old notebooks, the ones he had kept locked in a filing cabinet in the janitor's closet. Diagrams, equations, sketches of parts that never got built. All of it poured out as if the years had never passed. He felt something stir inside him, not pressure, purpose, but then something happened that nobody expected. An article went viral overnight, an expose about Keon's history, written by a former Stratix employee who had left the company around the same time he did. The piece described how Keon's departure had been pushed by internal politics, jealous colleagues, and silent discrimination masked behind professional language. The story accused Stratix of letting go of their best engineer because he did not fit their culture. It included emails, quotes, and internal memos. It was damning. By morning, the auto world was on fire. Social media was flooded with support for Keon. Engineering blogs praised him as a genius unfairly cast aside. News outlets requested interviews. Everyone was talking. Shayla read the article during her lunch break, her eyes wide with shock. She rushed to find Keon. "Did you know this story was going to drop?" Keon shook his head. "I had no idea." Reuben stormed in, holding a printed copy of the article. "Is this true?" Keon looked at the headline, "The Mind Behind the Machine, How Corporate Ego Drove Out a Genius." "Yes," he said quietly, "it is." Shayla looked heartbroken. "Why did you never tell anyone?" Keon replied, "Because I did not want my pain to become someone else's weapon. I walked away so I could heal, not to become a symbol. But it was too late. Whether he wanted to or not, Keon had become one." That afternoon, Stratix's executives returned again, this time not with smiles. "We did not know this story was coming," Leonard said. "It caught us off guard." Keon stared at him. "Then maybe you should have known your company better." The other executive stepped forward. "We still want to move forward with the offer. We want to make this right." "You want to fix your public image," Keon replied. "Not me." Silence. "You did not protect me when I was inside your walls. Now that the world is watching, you want to pretend that you care?" Leonard looked down, ashamed. "We understand," he said quietly, "but the offer still stands." When they left, Reuben approached Keon once again, this time with a different kind of concern. "You need to be careful. You are being dragged into something bigger than just fixing engines." "I know," Keon said. "They are going to want you to speak out, to fight, to pick sides." Keon looked him straight in the eyes. "I already picked my side when I chose integrity over ego." The next few days were overwhelming. Cameras showed up outside the garage. Customers wanted to shake Keon's hand. People drove in from out of town just to get a glimpse of him. One even brought a broken-down sports car and begged Keon to fix it. But through all the noise, Keon stayed the same. He cleaned floors. He helped mechanics. He answered questions when asked and stepped back when not. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. It was handwritten. Inside was a simple message. "You fixed my minivan last week without asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I got my son to his surgery. It went well. Thank you for being who you are. You changed my life more than you know." The letter broke something open in Keon, not because it praised his skills, but because it reminded him why he had started fixing things in the first place. Not for credit, not for fame, but because it mattered. That night, he made his decision. He asked Reuben for a private meeting. "I will be leaving in 2 weeks," Keon said. "I am accepting a different offer, not Stratix's." A startup reached out, a small engineering firm started by 2 young black founders. They want to build cleaner, smarter engines for public transportation. They believe in people more than polish. Reuben blinked. "Why not take the bigger offer?" Keon smiled. "Because this time I am not chasing a name. I am building something with meaning." Reuben extended his hand. "You will be missed." Keon shook it. "And I will never forget what I learned here about humility, about starting over." That night, Shayla came to say goodbye privately. "I am proud of you," she said. "You were part of the reason I found my strength again," Keon told her. They stood in silence for a long time. Then Shayla reached into her pocket and handed him a small wrench, the one he had helped her use on her first engine job. "Keep it," she said. "To for luck." Keon held it tight, and as he walked out of the garage for the final time, the entire crew lined up outside, not to applaud, not to film him, but to show respect. No uniforms could hide it anymore. Keon Dawes was no janitor. He was a builder, a teacher, a force of change. Keon arrived at the small industrial lot that served as the headquarters of his new opportunity, a startup called Lumina Drive. It was run by 2 young founders, Deanna Ward and Rico Eldon, both engineers with bold ideas and a passion for innovation. The space was raw, scattered with wires, whiteboards filled with equations, and parts from prototype engines that were still being tested. They did not care about suits or titles. They cared about change. "Welcome to the team," Tiana said as she handed Keon his security badge. "We did not just hire you to help us, we hired you to lead." Keon, for the first time in years, felt a quiet rush of excitement, not nerves, not fear, just a sense that something real was finally about to begin. Within a few weeks, he was knee-deep in designs, pulling late nights not because someone told him to, but because the work made him feel alive. He mentored the younger engineers on the team, showed them things no textbook could explain, and often reminded them, "It is not about who built it first, it is about who built it better." Word about Lumina Drive started to spread. Investors who once laughed off the idea of an eco-efficient combustion system were now scheduling calls. Journalists who once ignored Keon's contributions were asking for interviews, but he stayed focused on the mission, building a clean, affordable engine that could power buses, trucks, and even small generators in underserved neighborhoods. One day, Tiana rushed into the lab with an email printed in her hand. "You are not going to believe this," she said, nearly out of breath. "Stratix just announced a competing engine that looks suspiciously like our prototype." Keon took the paper. His eyes scanned the specifications. "They copied it," he said quietly, "but they did not understand it. Should we take legal action?" Rico asked. Keon shook his head. "Not yet. Let us finish ours. Let us make it undeniable." That became their new mantra. Make it undeniable. For months, the team worked in silence. No big announcements, no flashy teasers, just steady progress. While Stratix poured millions into marketing, Lumina Drive focused on function. Then came the break they did not expect. A representative from the State Department of Transportation visited their facility. He had heard whispers of what they were building and wanted to test it himself. "We are considering a new contract," he said. "City buses across 5 districts. We need something greener, cheaper, and dependable." Keon led him to their test engine and walked him through the components. When the man asked, "What makes yours different?" Keon did not talk about awards or degrees. He pointed to the exhaust sensor. "This sensor adjusts itself in real time based on the terrain and humidity," Keon said, "which means less waste, less cost, and longer engine life." The man nodded slowly. "I would like to bring a review board here next week." The following week came fast. Keon and the team held their breaths as government engineers and environmental analysts pored over every bolt, wire, and circuit. At the end of the day, the lead analyst stepped forward. "It is not just good," she said. "It is better, safer, smarter." 2 days later, Lumina Drive received their first major contract, a $27 million agreement to retrofit 430 city buses across multiple states. The startup exploded overnight. News outlets reported the story everywhere. Startup-led. By former Janitor beats major auto firm in eco-engine race, David beats Goliath in green tech showdown. Keon Dawes' comeback is the innovation story of the year. Meanwhile, Stratix struggled to explain why their system, despite massive funding, was overheating during stress tests. Quietly, some of their executives were being reassigned. But for Keon, none of that mattered anymore. His focus was not on revenge, it was on responsibility. With new funding and momentum, Lumina Drive expanded. They opened a second lab, hired more engineers, partnered with universities to mentor students, and at every step, Keon made sure the mission never changed. No one was hired based on their school or last name. Everyone was valued. One afternoon, Shayla came to visit. She stood at the edge of the lab, watching as young engineers tested engine simulations under Keon's guidance. When he noticed her, his face lit up. "You came," he said, walking over. "I had to," she smiled. "Everyone in the industry is talking about this place. I kept your wrench," he said. "Still brings me luck." They sat together in the break room, catching up. Shayla told him she had been promoted to lead mechanic at the shop. Ruben had stepped back, making her the youngest person to hold the position in its history. "I still teach the rookies the way you taught me," she said. You were always meant to lead," he replied. Before she left, Shayla turned to him and asked, "Do you ever miss it?" Keon thought for a moment. "I miss the quiet, the simplicity, but this is where I am meant to be now." As Lumina Drive's success continued to grow, Keon began receiving invitations from places that once ignored him: conferences, expos, even his former university. One letter stood out: an invitation to speak at the International Engineering Leadership Summit hosted by Stratix Rico. Upon reading it, nearly laughed. "They want you to keynote their event?" Keon did not laugh. He nodded. "Then I will go." Tiana raised an eyebrow. "You sure? It will be tense." "I am not going to shame anyone," Keon said. "I am going to show the next generation that starting from the bottom does not mean you belong there." A week later, he stood on a large stage in front of thousands of engineers, CEOs, and students from around the world. Lights bright, cameras rolling. He began with no slides, no graphs, just a simple story. "I used to clean floors for a living," he said, "not because I could not build, but because some people could not see past what I wore." The room fell, silent, but I kept building, in notebooks, in my mind, in silence, until one day someone gave me a chance, and then another, and then I gave that chance to someone else. He looked out at the audience. "Do not wait for permission to be excellent. Be excellent anyway." When he stepped off stage, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. Keon did not smile for the cameras. He smiled for himself because he knew this was not the peak. This was the platform, and there was still more to build. After the summit, the world started seeing Keon differently. Before, people whispered his name behind closed doors, unsure if a man without titles could be trusted. Now his name was being written into case studies, mentioned in boardrooms, and etched into textbooks. Not because of where he came from, but because of what he had built. In the months that followed, Lumina Drive expanded into international markets. They signed partnerships in South Africa, Brazil, and India, adapting their engine technology to serve communities that had long been overlooked by mainstream manufacturers. Keon insisted that every new branch hired locally, trained young talent, and focused on building from within. He turned down multiple acquisition offers, some worth hundreds of millions, because he believed in what he had started. He was not just building engines anymore. He was building a culture, and yet, despite the success, Keon never changed how he carried himself. He still wore the same worn-out watch Shayla gave him when he left the shop. He still kept that lucky wrench in his desk drawer. He still spent Sundays visiting small garages, talking to young mechanics and reminding them that being underestimated could be their greatest strength. One day, an unexpected letter arrived. It was from Ruben, the former owner of the auto shop who had once called Keon just a janitor. His handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear. "Keon, I watched your speech. I was wrong about you, about a lot of things. Age humbles a man in ways success never can. You taught me more than I ever taught you. If you are ever willing, I would like to meet, not to ask anything, but to say what I should have said years ago. I am proud of you." Keon sat quietly with the letter in his hand for a long time. He folded it carefully, placed it beside his wrench, and whispered to himself, "Took him long enough." But he meant it with peace, not bitterness. Meanwhile, Shayla had started her own scholarship fund for underrepresented students pursuing automotive and engineering careers. She named it the Dawes Pathway in Keon's honor, though she never told him directly. One of the first recipients of the scholarship was a young woman named Talisha Grant, a quiet genius with calloused hands and big dreams. When she came to visit the Lumina Drive lab for a tour, Keon personally walked her through each prototype. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he told her. She raised an eyebrow. "Was she good?" Keon smiled. "She became great." At Lumina Drive's 5-year anniversary, the team held a celebration. Not a flashy gala, but a community cookout on the front lawn of their original facility. Families, staff, engineers, city officials, everyone came. It was not just a celebration of success, it was a celebration of survival. Keon stood in front of the small crowd, holding a simple microphone, dressed in jeans and a Lumina Drive shirt. "I have had a lot of titles in my life," he began. "Some people use them to lift me up. Others use them to put me down." He paused. "But the one that stuck with me most was the first one. Janitor." The crowd chuckled. "I say that proudly," he continued, "because while I was cleaning up after everyone else, I was also cleaning up my own doubts, my own fears. I learned to be precise, patient, humble. And when the time came to build something new, I built it with the same hands that once held a mop." People clapped, some with tears in their eyes. He held up a small silver keychain. It was a miniature version of an engine piston, engraved with the words, "Started from the floor, rose to the core." "I want every kid who has ever been overlooked to know, your time will come. Stay ready, stay real. And when that door opens, do not just walk through it, build another one behind you." As the crowd cheered, Deanna leaned over to Rico and whispered, "He is not just changing engines, he is changing lives." In the years that followed, Lumina Drive continued to grow, not just in size, but in purpose. They opened youth training centers in underserved communities, sponsored innovation contests for teens, and created a mentorship pipeline that brought high school students straight into paid internships. Keon stayed at the helm, not because he needed control, but because he wanted to protect the heart of what they had built. One afternoon, while visiting a small engine shop in Mississippi, a boy no older than 10 approached him. "Mr. Keon?" the boy asked shyly. "Yes." "Is it true you used to be a janitor before you made engines?" Keon knelt to his level. "It is true." The boy looked at him with wide eyes. "Then maybe I can be great too." Keon rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You already are. Now go prove it." As the sun set behind the shop, Keon watched the boy run off, dreams in his steps, and in that moment, with no cameras around, no press releases, no board meetings, Keon felt the full weight of everything he had built, not just the engines, not just the company, but the belief that no matter where someone starts, they can rise if given a chance, if they stay ready, if they believe in who they are, and that, more than any paycheck, contract, or award, was the legacy he wanted to leave behind. Keon Dawes, the janitor who dared to fix what no one else could, had built more than engines. He had built a movement, and it all started the moment someone dared him to try.